to begin. Great. So Bharatji, welcome. And I'm so happy to host you again. I've done a few webinars with you and you have guided us and enlightened us on many issues. I just want to introduce you to the broader audience. We are streaming live on various platforms today. Dia TV is carrying us. Also, a couple of other sessions are being held in India, like with Jaipur Dialogues and Infinity Foundation, all are going to host us. So Dr. Bharat Gupt, welcome. Dr. Bharat Gupt is a widely traveled Delhi University ex-professor emeritus, and he specializes in Hindu texts, arts, and philosophy. He's also a classicist, theater, and sitar and surbahar player, musicologist, and cultural analyst. And, I've read your articles in newspapers also. And apart from this, you're also widely traveled, Bharatji, and you've also studied abroad and, held lectures abroad. So all of the depth of understanding that you bring of, understanding the global perspective of how India is perceived or Hindutva is perceived, or, you shared with me one of your talks, which was why is there a fear of Hindutva abroad? And you've also shared with me your understanding of, the various schools of thought in academia. So I think we'd love to hear from you, your comments about today's session. Please take it away. Bharatji, the floor is yours.
Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. My namaskars to everybody. I am delighted to be here with Richa Gautam and being invited by my old friend Rajiv Verma, who is one of the strong activists here in North America. Now, I must begin, first of all, by paying my condolences to more than 3,000 people who lost their lives this day, 20 years ago. And my heart also reaches out to the relatives, children of the people who lost their lives. And this was one of the most heinous acts of cruelty in modern human history. And it is not unconnected with the topic of the day. That is how people are perceiving Hinduism in the West, and hence how they are perceiving the land of Hindus, that is India or Hindustan or Bharatvarsha. It has many names, as you say. Now, what has happened in the recent times is the creation of a straw man called Hindutva. You see, people have been interested in India or Hinduism or the people called Hindus right from very, very ancient times. And there are records of it in the Persian sources, Greek sources, etc. And everybody has a view of India. And everybody has perceived India as a single culture, in spite of its immense diversity, in spite of its immense variety of faith, etc., or what they are now touting as multiculturalism in the West. In spite of all that, they have recognized India as a single cultural unity. And this has been put to all kinds of uses, from trade to pillaging to plundering, etc., over hundreds of years, or rather thousands of years, and we have history for that. But in recent times, let us say something like last, I would say almost 40 years, a new rhetoric has developed that there is on one side Hinduism, and on the other side there is what is called Hindutva. Now, obviously the word Hindutva is of Indian origin, Somebody used it in the late 19th century, some Bengali scholar, I forget his name. And then it was used by Savarkar, as you all know, in his book called Hindutva, and he signed that book as Maratha. So that was 1923. Earlier than that, in his Uttarpada speech, Sri Aurobindo had defined Indian nationalism as Sanatan Dharma. So these are, in the 20th century, very clear thoughts about what is called Indian nationalism. Now we are using the English term Indian nationalism. For Aurobindo, it was Sanatan Dharma. And Aurobindo was clear that Sanatan Dharma was not sectarian. When Sanatan Dharma progresses, then India progresses. And when India progresses, because of Sanatan Dharma, according to Aurobindo, the world progresses. So he said that in his Uttarpada speech, and then in his later books and writings, he expanded upon that. In 23, Savarkar brought out the book Hindutva, and this was giving, apart from a cultural entity, a territorial association very clearly defined in terms of nationalism. Now, modern nationalism, or for that matter, any nationalism, has to have a territory. And although nationalism is about 400 years old, beginning in Europe with the rise of print culture and languages, and then different parts of Europe becoming different nations like the German, the British, the French nations on the basis of language, India had an entirely different perspective of culture where one language or one religion or mat or matantar could not be the foundation of its identity, because Indian identity is so old and so diverse, and it is a unified identity. So Savarkar made a definition which he wrote in that book, but which can be encapsulated very clearly in a single shloka, which is A Sindhu Sindhu Pariyanta Yasya Bharat Bhumika Pitrabhumi Punya Bhumishcha Hindur iti smritaha. So the world person who considers Bharat Bhumi is the land from the eastern sea to the western sea, from Himalayas to the southern sea. This particular land, which is called Bharat Bhumi, if he considers it as his Punya Bhumi and as his Pitra Bhumi, then that person is called Hindu. And the sense of being Hindu is Hindutva. The cultural sense of being Hindu is Hindutva. Proud of being Hindu is Hindutva. Now, if you can just look at this, it's a very factual statement which enlarges upon European nationalism. Because European nationalism was largely Christianity oriented and language oriented. Savarkar brings the Indian reality or the Hindu reality to it, which could not be just a linguistic territory, which could not be just a religious territory, religious or religion defined not in terms of Sanatan Dharma or any Dharma in the Indian sense of Darshana, but in the European sense, later European, not even Greek or Roman sense, because those are pagan cultures closer to India. So he expanded it for modern times in terms of territory, in terms of a cultural affiliation, and then belonging. Now, the sense of belonging and cultural belonging is absolutely essential to United States of America, for an American national, for a French national to France, allegiance to the territory, allegiance to the flag, and there is nothing so obnoxious about it as is touted by all kinds of people when they examine Savarkar's Hindutva. So when he said Pitrabhumi, what does he mean? He means the territory, and Pitrabhumi is synonymous with motherland, as Savarkar says. And many cultures use the word Pitrabhumi or fatherland for motherland. The Greeks use it even for this day. They call their land Patrida, or the land of my forefathers. So that makes no difference. It does not make it fascist. It does not make it Hitler. It does not make it oppressing others. It only means owing allegiance to your ancestors, which are both males and females, which are father and mother, and the land and the culture. So that is the Pitrabhumi, allegiance to Pitrabhumi, and allegiance to Punya Bhumi, which means the culture. And Savarkar has defined it very well. So he says that if you owe allegiance to the territory of Bharata Bhumi, if you owe allegiance to this as Pitrabhumi, if you owe allegiance to it as culture, then you are a Hindu, irrespective of the fact that you may be a Muslim or a Christian. And he says, and you can read page 102 of the original first edition. I don't have time because I have only half an hour to speak to read out that page, but you can go to page 102 where he says that if a Muslim thinks that his holy land is in Kaaba, or if a Christian thinks that his holy land is in Jerusalem, then certainly he is not a Hindu or he is not an Indian national. Now, how is that different from all of you sitting in America, those who hold American nationality, like my own son does in North America? How is it different from what you are doing and what Savarkar asked? Are you not having an allegiance to the flag of United States? Are you not having an allegiance to the culture of United States? Are you not having an allegiance to the territory of United States? You may not be born here, but your children would be born here, like my grandson is born there, 2 grandsons. So is that not a fatherland for them? Is that not a motherland for them? So when people create this horror of horrors about Savarkar and Hindutva, then all you can see through it is just simple, cheap politics. And now I will come on to analyze what is the politics, and I'll put my finger straight on to, to the fault line. How did this debate in 1925 arise? This arose because in 1920, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, he allowed thousands of Indian Muslims to proclaim allegiance to the Mustafa of Turkey, not Kamal Pasha, but the Ottoman king, as the leader of the Ummah, that he should not be deposed by the British, that he should be recognized as the head of the Islamic Ummah in the world. So thousands of Muslims came from India, went to Turkey and fought against Kamal Pasha in favor of the last Ottoman king, who was also the Mustafa, or the leader. Now, if Muslims were going to owe their allegiance to the Turkish Ottoman and not to India, then would they not be a divided lot? Would they be, in any sense of the word, qualify for holding an Indian passport as and when India would be independent? Would they be in any sense qualified to call themselves an Indian if they have their allegiance to somebody outside the territory of India? That applies to every nation. And it was at this point that Savarkar made it very clear that if you owe allegiance, if you have love for the culture of this land, and he defined the culture not in vague terms as our present day multiculturalists do, either in America or in Europe, because they are very confused about what is polyculture or what is multiculture. He defined it, as did Sri Aurobindo, as did Vivekanand, as would anybody who has read the Indian text from Rig Veda to the great text of the present times. He would define, that is Savarkar, did define it in terms of this great textual tradition, not this vague thing which Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan said, Hinduism, a way of life. No, we have a way of life based on textual convictions. And it was on these textual convictions that the culture, the Sanskriti, and the Punya Bhumi rests. This was the definition of Hindutva. And I don't think that logically anybody can have any other definition of Indian nationalism. Whether the person is a Jew, a Parsi, a Christian, or a Muslim. And this applies in different corresponding terms to a Frenchman, to a German, to a Chinese, or to an American. So I have now established for you why this kind of a straw man is being raised about Hindutva. The straw man of Hindutva is being raised in Europe and America in order to disparage and malign Hinduism. How does Hinduism, and I'm going to use the word Hinduism, in which I cover Hindutva, because this suffix tva means essential quality. It's a suffix which is used in Sanskrit. It is used in classical Greek, tita, tit, that way. So it means essential quality of being in this way. So if you are a Hindu, then you will have certain essential characteristics, an ethos, a moral projection of what you are. And the two cannot be separated. So it is absolutely stupid. It is half-brained thinking to say that Hindutva is one thing and Hinduism is another. Some people may say that Hindutva is Narendra Modi and a political party. Okay, then why not say political party? Why not say BJP and RSS? Why say the word Hindutva? Just say that we don't like it, we oppose it, and you are free to do that. But the reason for creating the confusion for the smoke screen is different. And the reason is this. I give you my opinion on it, a frank opinion, a politically incorrect opinion, but that is what the truth is. You see, the whole world for last 2,000 years has been divided in a single conflict. On one side are people who love the murti, who love the icon, who love the vigraha, who love God in stone, wood, metal, art, painting, whatever, and who worship the divine in that form, who do not distinguish the material existence of that vigraha, that murti, that stone, that paper, from the real, the essential divine. For them, the sagun and the nirgun are one. Broadly speaking, this is one side. And on this side are all the Buddhists, the Jains, people who live or used to live in the forests of Amazon, in Africa, Australia, the people whom we call forest dwellers, Girijan, whatever name you may give them. On one side, we have these people. On the other side, we have the Abrahamics, who are so hung up on the idea that there can be no image for God. To make an image is a sin, and those who make images can be punished. Their lands can be acquired, their women can be taken away, their children be enslaved. Now, this is all very plain and simple textual knowledge. I don't have to go on repeating. This is the fundamental conflict. Don't think this conflict was over, ever. It was not over when Christianity underwent a renaissance. No. Christianity acquired another avatar, so to speak, another shape, another morphe, which was in the form of capitalism. And this was naked capitalism and colonialism, which occupied lands of others in the name of God, Christian God, and the Christian king, and similarly Islam. Now, the whole thing continues to this day as part of the heritage of those who think that they can do aggression under various pretenses. Dear friends, I would not like you to have any illusions about it. There are plenty of people in modern times who have written about it. And people like Sitaram Goyal have written very extensively and very clearly. Even my book of 208, India, a Cultural Decline or Revival, lays out these things very barely and very simply. That this is the essential battle. Now, if you see the present scenario, if you see the reasons why we are meeting in these conferences and a flurry of conferences in North America and India today being pushed into this kind of thing by some other kind of advocacy which is going on the other side, on the side of our contestants and aggressors, then things become very clear. The clarity is in terms of the vision of life. Many people will come and talk to you about Christian mysticism. They will come and talk to you about Sufis. They will come and talk to you about the traditions of love poetry in medieval Italian or in the so-called Sufi poets. Well, those are very minor, marginal traditions of Christianity and Islam. Those traditions never had a sway, and they never had any power. They were parasites to the majority of the people who had power. And they were really the smoke screen, the soft side, in order to convert Hindus, Buddhists, and various other people into either Islam or Christianity. Now, it's the same battle which is going on, that you talk about Hinduism, and then you portray Hinduism as what? You portray Hinduism as something which is oppressive. You portray Hinduism as the great oppression of conducted by Brahmins against the whole population. You portray Hindus as homo hierarchicus, as Louis Dumont said, that they believe essentially in hierarchy. You don't talk about sarvamidam khalu brahma. You do not talk about the essential unity of being, but you only talk about the social order. And who are the people who are talking? These are the cultures who never had a middle class in their history. You know, right from the Greek and the Roman period to, let us say, 18th century, there was no middle class in Mediterranean or in Europe. Either there was the ruling class or there was the serving class, the lord and the serf. And these are the people who talk about hierarchy, who impose a hierarchy of inhuman inequality on Hinduism, whereas they have practiced it all the time for time immemorial. And now, of course, you are all familiar with the new equation which they are creating, that there was Hitler who believed that he had a right to persecute the Jews, to kill them, to send them to gas chambers. And then there were the white supremacists who had the right to enslave the blacks. And as a correspondence to that, you have the Hindus now who have been forcibly retrofitted into this model of people who believe in this hierarchy of caste. So the Varna ashram system, Brahma, Kshatriya, Vaishya, which is essentially an economic order with a huge Vaishya and Shudra middle class, historically verified. I don't have the time to go through it, but you can see my dozens of video lectures on my YouTube channel explaining that as to how India was a huge middle class and it was not this kind of a oppressor and oppressed distinction. So this is the truth about it. Now, what is essential for us? We have to make a counter-analysis. And I think it is time to put not just anti-colonialism in the dock. You know, that kind of colonialist studies or study of coloniality and study of post-coloniality, and then this whole Derrida business, that has happened for a long time. And that itself is now like burying your head in sand because there are no principles of it. It is a kind of plurality without anything to anchor upon. This is camouflaging the real aggressiveness. Now you can see there is another major factor which has taken place right now, and it is coming together of the people of the book. You know, there are three people of the book, or rather there are four people of the book: the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, and the Marxists, because these are the people who begin with the book, study the book, and they end up with the book. So right now, the Jews, of course, have been for a very long time out of any political power. So they are victimized. But the three, they are in a very clear alignment. And what you are seeing in the United States particularly is the camaraderie of the Marxists, of the Islamists, and largely the Marxists and the Islamists, who are promoting a new culture of valuelessness. Hinduism has fought this battle a long time back. It has fought this battle 2,000 years ago. This was the battle against the Gnostics, the Charavas, those who believe that this body is the ultimate truth, that when this body ends, then everything ends, you know, nothing comes back. So this whole doctrine that you can be aggressors, Grinam Kritva Gritam Prabhet, I mean, have a great time, take a debt and have a good time, die, nobody comes back, you are not responsible. So this kind of anarchism, moral anarchism, is now the dominant philosophy, which actually is being infiltrated by hardcore Islamism, because Islamism provides security of thought. It provides an iron jacket thought into which the insecure can go. So some people are outside talking of anarchism, of wokeism, of valuelessness, of all kinds of inclusiveness. And on the other side are people who have a perfect, rigorous system, a regimen to follow. Eventually, the people who have a regimen to follow will win out of the two. And you can see that for the time being, they have gained politically, and they gained politically just last week. And that is the big challenge from which a large number of scholars of Europe and America are running away. And what they have found, a punching bag. And that punching bag, because of colonial convenience, is Hinduism. So they can set out their anger, their frustration, and their violence against Hindus. People who have contributed the maximum even to United States in last 100 years. They are not asking for a law of Manusmriti like the Muslims are asking for Sharia. They are not asking for a very different dress code. They are not asking for a separate education system. They are not asking for special reservations. They are not asking for social concessions. But on the contrary, they are one with the American spirit of enterprise, competition, and crossing the border and excelling in it. It's all on record. So I think it is a battle which is being fought in America as much as elsewhere. In India, it's being fought in a very different manner in terms of political hegemony, in terms of trying to alter the borders and the territories of India. In America, it is in cultural terms. So I have said what I wanted to say at this present juncture. I thank you all for giving me a patient hearing, and I would welcome questions.
Thank you, Bharatji. Thank you so much. As usual, very insightful and very, very in-depth understanding of, a concept that we really never grew up thinking about, Hindutva, or, just as even as Hindus, we were so sort of, anyone who went into English schools or Christian schools, in fact, we were just stayed away from our own cultural moorings, so to speak.
Right.
Right. And I am going to ask people to please put your questions in chat, because otherwise it'll take too long. And we have ended at a good time. We have time for questions. I have one very important question, which I'm sort of shocked with the idea that, the concept of idol worshiping is so core to the Abrahamic religions, and the anti-ness that they have, the antagonism that they have for idol worshiping or murti puja, as we do. So you brought that out very clearly, that this is politically incorrect, but something we have to bring out. And I have had friends who have pointed that out to me, who are from other faiths, that idol worship to them is just anathema completely. So that's how they are it's sort of ingrained in them. It's indoctrinated in them that that's a very bad thing. And we are probably the only civilization that does that at this time, right? Bharatji, I would like you to weigh in on that.
Yes, of course, you have pointed out the major point of departure and difference between the Abrahamics and the so-called polytheists. But let me add something here. Those who worship the idols, they have created great art in history. Those who hate the idols or the murtis, they have repeatedly destroyed art world over. Whether it was the Christians who destroyed Greek art for 400 years, who broke the temples of ancient Olympian civilization to install Christianity, or it was the Islamic people, right down to the recent attack on Bahamian Buddhas. And I'm sure this is going to be repeated very soon now. You will hear more of it. There is no other way. These are the people who hate the human body. These are the people who cannot recreate the human body beautifully. like the ancient Greeks or the Chinese or the Hindus did. And therefore they hate women, because the beautiful body of women is something which is the greatest challenge for them. The very concept of beauty begins and ends with Murti worship. This is historically true. And people don't like this to be pointed out. In 2018, I was giving a lecture at University of Hawaii, and when I said that India produced great arts, more art than anybody else, then in that Department of South Asian Studies, where I was delivering this keynote address, there were objections, and there were objections from a very famous Indian philosopher who called me something virtually a supremacist, a Hindu supremacist. Now, that kind of thinking has been ingrained into the Hindus as well. You see, I went to a college, a Christian college in Delhi, and for 5 years, I had to listen to the Bible the first thing in the morning. I went to St. Stephen's College, and for 5 years, the Bible was read out because there was a Christian service. So, if I had not read the Vedas, if I had not read Tulsidas, if I did not know Sanskrit, if I did not know classical music, if I had not studied Greek culture, then I would be believing that all idol worship is worshipping either false gods or it is worshipping God in a lower form of worship, in something which is not the best form of worship like yoga. Now, the Hindu has been brought up on this syndrome for the last 150 years, right from middle of the 18th century. And he has been right through this Brahmo Samaj, through Arya Samaj, through social reform of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi never went into the temple. He only wanted others, the Shudras, to go to the temple, but he himself never went and worshipped. So this kind of social reform, which is basically rooted in the Christian model, is not going to save Hindus. They have to understand their own tradition, that worship is through the mind, it is through the speech, and it is through the body. Manasa, vacha, karmana. And this is ritual. And this is yoga. This is karma. This is bhakti. And this is the essential method through which Hindus have worshipped right from the Vedic times to the modern times. And Hinduism has always created diversity, and it has always created inclusiveness. You see, all those people who are accusing Hindus of being discriminatory, not admitting the Christians and the Muslims, they should just go to Aurobindo. Shri Aurobindo's mother, the mother of Shri Aurobindo, created Aurobindo. And you go and see how divinity is worshipped in great diversity and how everybody is welcome. It's a living, practical model.
Yes.
Not something on paper only.
Actually, any guru, ashram that I have been to, whether it's Amma's ashram down in the south or, any of them, Auroville, or they all have this inclusive sort of, community gathering and sangha. And what you just said, dharma is so holistic, including mana, the body, the mind, the soul, the spiritual self. And, one of the things I wanted to ask you was also about a construct that you brought up about Hindutva when you were explaining that. I think this is an intriguing term. It's good to dwell a little bit on that. That, is it a civilizational construct, a geographical construct, or is it of course, you clearly pointed out that there is a geographical construct to it. but is it also a civilizational construct? Because I sometimes do get confused with that.
It is certainly a civilizational conflict, a civilizational concept. It is essentially and primarily a civilizational concept. You see, in India too, we are constantly debating the Nehruvian idea. For Nehru, civilization was like a 5-star or a 3-star or a hotel where you come, you occupy a room, you stay there for good, you don't pay rent, and there you are forever. So anybody can come and stay, and then they can call the land of India as theirs if they so want, and they can, quote unquote, as Shashi Tharoor is so fond of saying, become one of us. And by being one of us, they can always ask another Pakistan, because they say, I am here, but I am not really here, because my allegiance is elsewhere. Now, this is the Nehruvian model, where by sheerly staying together, you make a nation and you make a diversity. On the other hand, there is the real practical Hindu model in which there are certain principles of inclusiveness, in which you ask others to worship a supreme reality your own way, but not break away from the common good of the land and from the common good of the civilization. And you become part of that civilization. So this is the truth about the civilization, the culture. But in modern terms, a nation has to have a territory defined. Now, this territory can change. This territory can change even within India, as India changes as a nation. This territory changes when a Hindu from India comes and settles in America. Then for him, the allegiance is to a different territory, not the same territory. But there is the Hindu root or the civilizational root. That civilizational root has to find a place in the earth of United States of America. And Hinduism encourages that. Hinduism does not want Hindus to create little Hindu Indias in America. I think this is something which the American Academy of Religion should understand. That Hindus in America are not trying to do that. They are with the idea of the American nation. So, inclusiveness has been proved by the action of Hindus in last 100 years. And not just in America. I have given an example because I am addressing the American audience, but the same thing applies to people or Hindus who went to Africa, to Fiji, to Malaysia, to all these places. There's a history of 1,000 years of Hindu people going in east of India, right up to Japan, and making cultural contribution. So the cultural reality of Hinduism is the ultimate reality. And it behaves differently with the territory to which it is attached, to Desh and Kal. Because we have this notion of Desh and Kal, space and time undergoing change, something which is not found in the Abrahamic tradition, or which the Abrahamic tradition are perhaps just struggling to achieve.
Right, right. Actually, that's a very important point. There are certain concepts in our traditions. For example, even the four Purusharthas, if you look at the modern world, it is largely based on Artha and Kama. When you look at Dharma and Moksha, there is a certain level of moral compass that is absent, where greed overtakes and supersedes any sort of, venture or adventure or, anything that people do. So that is why environment suffers, there are so many consequences to it. So the dharmic and holistic outlook is something that really people should embrace and appreciate. But here we are discussing, why, as your topic is analyzing the root of the global narrative on Hindutva, which has been a term much maligned around the world. But thank you so much for bringing that clarity, Bharatji. And, maybe if you have some frameworks or any thought to give as a last, conclusive remarks, because we are going to cover some of the things you talked about, caste, and, some of the concepts of Brahmanism that they are bringing up are going to be covered in a later session today. Even women and feminism, that is going to be covered, how, the portrayal of Hinduism in that aspect. But I think I would love to have your concluding remarks on this topic.
Yes, you see, recently I have pulled up the courage to speak on Manusmriti. People thought that Manusmriti is an evil text, so just don't talk about it, politically incorrect to talk about it. And I have tried to explain the ancient value system, the ancient social system through Manusmriti, because Manusmriti is the representative text. And I have taken the view that Manusmriti is not just caste or varna jati, that it is a whole system in which the center of the universe is not human being. You see, where does this problem begin? This problem begins in Europe when, after the discarding of old Christianity with the Renaissance, man is made the center of the universe. Everything is for man. So man will go out from Europe and conquer the rest of the world. Man will acquire things. Man will continue to acquire things. Man will go to moon. Man will go to Mars. And now they will do cutting edge explorations. And they will conquer nature, and they will continue to conquer nature and go beyond the sunset, as the English poet Tennyson said. So this is the civilizational push in which there is no higher aim, or what is called paramartha, the highest aim beyond the material aim. Now, this is something which is missing in modern civilization. In so-called enlightenment. People talk of enlightenment, especially in India, the Nehruvians, as if that was another Veda for humanity. But enlightenment is only for the sake of human beings, not for animals. So it was soon after this age of enlightenment that you came to America, you took out your gun and you started shooting down the woolly mammoth, the woolly bison, and you just killed them for fun.
And also they refused to acknowledge, the Native Americans as human also.
Yes.
So they were also annihilated.
I used to teach this phrase when I was teaching American literature. A good Indian is a dead Indian. I forget today what is the text from where it is, but that was the common westward ho. A good Indian is a dead Indian. So this is the age of enlightenment for you. And
Absolutely.
in contrast with that, Manusmriti places the cosmos before you. That human beings are a small part of the total. It's a text in humility. It is not a text in Brahminical tyranny. And then I go on to say many things which you can see in my videos. There are almost half a dozen videos on Manusmriti explaining all this as to what was the life of Brahmin, average Brahmin. It was of austerity. It was not a pot-bellied, overeating man, as Wendy Doniger would like to represent him, a trickster. So these are such massive distortions which Western academics do, and they have the advantage of churning out one book after another, because they can do all kinds of things with the material which is available to them, especially from the research of their own students. And it has almost become a propaganda machine. It is no longer a venue for honest exploration. I think honest exploration of the academic kind ended about almost 30, 35 years ago
Yes.
in the American subcontinents. I know my teachers in America in 60s, they had a very different orientation at the American universities from what I can see today, or what I have seen over the years.
I always say, Paraji, that social sciences needs the Galileo moment, where from it took them a really hard look and a tough time to move from a geocentric to a heliocentric model. And when you talk about the Manusmriti being a more cosmos oriented rather than a man oriented model, for the world to take that shift is probably what it will take for social sciences to become truthful, to become truly philosophical, and uh, presenting things in the right frameworks. So I think we should give some time to the tech team to transition to the next topic. And it has been so enlightening, Bharaji, and your sessions, I always catch up on YouTube. Always, there's so much to learn. And we are also going to have a session on Manusmriti from an ex-Christian who says the Manusmriti is more liberal than the Bible, and he has read both very seriously. So thank you for bringing that topic up. I think I just want to put that plug in, and yeah, we are going to discuss so many topics. So thank you, Bharaji, for you were one of the keynote, bringing the global perspective on this issue as well, and thank you so much for bringing that to us today.
My thanks to everybody. Thanks. Pranam.
This is a conference full of love. That's all I'll say. I've been watching some of